Hey everyone, Austin here. Today I'm going to show you how to compose one of my favorite tracks from How to Train Your Dragon 2. I'll click play, then we'll break it down. Alright, now before we get into it, I want to throw a little disclaimer out there. I didn't spend a ton of time on this particular track, mainly because I have some other projects I'm working on and I'm a little crunched for time. So this one's going to be more of a simple mock-up this time, but I did include the MIDI files in the description for anyone who wants to take a look at it, add it to the piece, or add on to the piece rather. Do whatever you want with it, yours to mess around with. Alright, so let's first, I guess, take a look at how this piece functions as a whole. We have percussion, strings, choir, harp, and obviously down here we have our bagpipes, Highland pipes. You need those if you're doing Scottish stuff, right? So let's see. One of the things that you'll notice is that there's a constant use of steady, low percussion throughout over half of this piece. So let's take a look at those first. I'll just solo these out just for a second here so you can hear them by themselves. Alright, pretty nice. Now what I did there was I took the low percussion from Albion, and then I combined that with the Sub Thunder preset in the Rise and Hits library. And what that lets you do is it, in this particular case, gives me a little, oh that's hard, we'll talk about that later, and that. What the little build-up from Rise and Hit does is it gives you that little bit of build-up into a hit, kind of like a drum roll. I didn't have a drum roll that I felt was subtle enough, so I thought let's use a little bit of sound design. So if you don't have drums that are subtle enough, or your particular drum sample doesn't do a roll into your hit, consider using some sound design. That actually works pretty well. Let me solo out this sound design for you, just so you can hear that. It's more of a low whoosh than anything, really. And the hit here from Albion. Oop, hang on. There we go. See, that's more of an actual drum. And now the drum works by itself, but I kind of wanted that little roll into it. Otherwise, you just kind of get this hit effect on there. That's great and all, but I think for the purpose of being cinematic, it helps to have these little, rolling build-ins in there. It adds to the emotional bits of it, I think. In a future video, I plan to go more in depth into Rise and Hit. It can actually get pretty deep in everything that you can do with it, so we'll tackle that another time. Otherwise, we would be here all night. So, let's see, part 2 of this, harp. Now, I have a few different harp samples that I used for this. One of them makes a better chord sound, the other library makes a better leading sound, in my opinion. Let me solo this harp stuff we have going on here real quick. Just play a little, I'll fast forward a little bit. Alright, now the first harp, the one I used for the beginning chords here to add some thickness to it for the intro, was the harp from Cinesamples, Cineharp. I like this harp. It does really good, like I said, chord sounds, but for me, especially up here, it was just a little too plucky and harsh for me for this particular track, but I use this library all the time in my work. Now, the other harp library that I used down here, the Celtic harp, is from Lumina, and this is really nice for a much softer type of sound. And you'll notice that the volume on it's turned down quite a bit too, so because it's mixed into the track. Now the Celtic harp lead, it's the same library as the one from Lumina. It's the same one. Then you put this on top of the one from Cinesamples that does better chords, in my opinion, and you have a pretty nice bass to work with. One thing that they've done in the track here was the lead melody was doubled with the strings, the choir, and the harp. I'll play that section here so that you can hear, and I'll mute these percussion bits. It might make it a little easier to hear. I thought that was a really nice thing that they did in the soundtrack. John Powell's always been really good at layering particular instruments to get a really nice sound. Now, next on our list here is the choir. I used Requiem Pro for this demonstration here because I tried the East-West choir for this, but it just wasn't quite giving me that softer sound that I was looking for. I would even, in fact, like for this library to go even a little bit softer if it could. I'm looking at a workaround right now, kind of doing an experiment to see how soft I can get a choir. I might be looking at other choir libraries to do that, but for what Requiem Pro is, it does epic type music very, very well. So we actually have quite a few of these choirs in here, all playing different parts. Choir 1, 2, men's bass, men's articulation later down the road. And I can solo out the choir for you here real quick, and I'll let you hear what's going on there. So yeah, I think that Requiem Pro did a nice job with that. Well, let's see here. Strings would be next. Now, in the track, they use tremolo strings rather than just a sustained legato, no bowing effect. And what that does is, in a piece like this, it really puts a lot of breath and air into the piece itself because you're using the tremolo on the bow. If you're writing pieces that need to be emotional and soft and light, And if you don't have any tremolo strings in there, you might want to throw some in there because it just does a really, really good job of lightening the piece, giving it a little bit of breath and life, and it works really, really, really well. In fact, they even do it here in the double bass. When they bring everything together, this is still all tremolo. I can solo these out too. Let you hear first violins tremolo, second violins, and the viola. We're all playing oh, okay. Yeah, Logic decided to have an episode. Okay, so let's see. Now, what I did here to give the this build section a little bit more body was I dropped the violas down an octave whenever this part comes around here, where all the instruments get a little bit thicker. Doing that gives the instrumentation a little bit more body without really changing much. So layering instruments and switching octaves around can be helpful if you don't want to change your instrumentation around too much, but you want to give the piece a feel that that something changed. That's a good way to do it. And see, that's also when the double basses come in, so a lot changes there. That's useful for cinematic writing is repetition. Not so much that you're beating someone over the head with it, but that it's developed enough that the audience will remember it. And in the case of this particular track, Stoic Ship, they repeat the melody from here and start it again here, but with thicker and heavier instrumentation because the scene becomes more emotional in How to Train Your Dragon Part 2, and adding bass, strings, the double bass, cello, and more men's bass choir in there is a really useful way to do that. I'll play through this section here so that you can hear when that change comes in now that we're paying a little bit more attention to smaller details like that. You hear that John Powell kind of does that a lot in his tracks. The first How to Train Your Dragon, second How to Train Your Dragon, even a few tracks in Kung Fu Panda actually did something very similar, where they will open with a melody. Oh, I'm sorry, they open with a short intro here, like what's going on over here. Then the melody actually starts with a choir or strings, whatever instruments that they happen to choose. And then once it runs through that again with all of its counterpoint and melodies underneath it, they'll do it again, but this time they'll bring in the bass and really fill it out. It's a really useful thing to do in cinematic writing, and I really enjoy it. Now let's look at this big build up here. I guess we'll start down here. There's really no list or anything for me to follow, so we'll just wing it. Let's see, bagpipes. Everybody loves bagpipes, so let's do those. Now, I'm using the bagpipe ensemble from East West Raw. It's a good library. You'll notice that it's a lot thinner sounding than the bagpipe ensemble than in How to Train Your Dragon. They probably have better bagpipes than what we have access to just in these sound libraries. But let me show you how I fix that. And they probably do this in the score too, I am assuming. So let's play this build up here, and I'm going to mute the legato strings, and you're just going to hear the pipes and the rest of the orchestra for that matter. See, really thin and kind of nasally. So what I did to fix that was I added a Highland pipe into the mix, which alone sounds like this. You know, just to give a little bit more air, a little bit more breath, a little bit more dynamic. Because the bagpipe ensemble in the East West Library, while it does sound good, didn't quite reach the level that we're looking for in this for this particular track's mock-up. So what I did was you add those. Let's see, we'll add the double. No, we won't add the double bass in there this time. For this part, let's see, violin and second violin's legato. You double the melody here with the bagpipes, and it really helps fill them out. So you can still hear the bagpipes, you can still hear all the Scottish flair that way it's supposed to be, but it's done in a bigger, more powerful way. Much easier on the ears, still sounds Scottish enough, and it does the job. So I'll just play a little bit of the section here with all the instruments in there. Now, something I kind of want to point out here is what's going on in the bass. You'll hear in the track it kind of goes bum bum bum. That is timpani doing that. That's this guy right here, and they're just doing that to accentuate the bass movement at the bottom, which I think works nice. And what I did to kind of thicken that up even more was for the second double bass section I have here is actually doing what the timpani is doing, but sustaining its notes, so kind of a marcato effect. Let's see, add these in there. The double bass string ensemble. This is playing the bass chord progression at the bottom here, beneath all this that's going on. Even the men here are playing bass for the most part, and men bass, obviously. So let's solo these guys out for a second so we can just hear what's going on in the bottom half of the orchestra. I promise you I could get that to sound better if I spent more time working on this, but like I said earlier, a little crunched for time, but I still want to start this series with something, so this is what we're starting that with. I guess while we're here we should take a look at the cymbals, since they do play an important role, so we won't totally leave them out. The cymbal roll is from Albion again, done by Spitfire, and this bagpipe ensemble can go away. Actually, they all can. Okay. And the crashes that I combined with them are also from Albion. I really like the Albion library. They just sound great. And I can solo these out, show you how they work together. If you don't have a cymbal or percussion library where a cymbal actually does a roll into a crash, you can make one yourself by layering a roll and a crash together like this. By itself, not so pleasing to the ears, but you know, with an orchestra, Now, for the reverb here, and I didn't spend a lot of time on mixing this at all, which is probably pretty obvious to your ears. But I will briefly go over, you know, what plugins I use to kind of get the sounds that I've gotten in the past and in the future. For the future mock-ups and stuff, I'll go much more in depth into mixing them the right way and making sure that they sound really, really good, and then going through the mixing process as well. So that will be covered in the future. So Quantum Leap Spaces. I really like Quantum Leap Spaces for it being the glue that kind of holds everything together. I'm using the Acme. Okay, yeah, I was right. Acme Storage, a true stereo rear 2 seconds. And what this does is it kind of puts everything into a room. See, every sound library was recorded in a different room because they're live instruments, and each one has its own reverb impulses. So what this does, instead of making everything sound like it's obviously from different libraries, this helps put everything into one room like it's in its own scoring stage and working together. I use a lot of it here because I did use the reverb that comes with a lot of the instruments in this track, like for example the strings here, the violins. These are Hollywood strings. I did use the new Hollywood Hall 2.6 reverb in their reverb selection. And here they've actually got quite a few to pick from in Hollywood strings, and they sound good because they were recorded where they were supposed to be as far as their own respective seatings, which is nice. For the choirs here, I'm kind of backtracking a little bit, but it is kind of important. For the choirs, I actually like the reverb that comes with them. If you open up your Requiem Pro and go to Effects, they have the reverbs right here. I like, I actually, because I have like 3 or 4 instances of these choirs open, I've done Cathedral Far 1, Cathedral Far 2, and Cathedral Mid, just so they weren't all kind of fighting in the same frequency range. It helps mix things up a little bit, give them a better sense of depth. So you select one of those, turn it on, and it really does help kind of put them further back into the mix, so I didn't need any additional reverb on those guys. I'll play this here with the Quantum Leap Spaces on, but only the wet signal, just so you can get an idea of how minimal this was, but how it also does help kind of glue all the instruments together in the same room. So dry signal going down. I'll put it back in. I think I may have accidentally nudged one of my MIDI regions because something didn't sound quite right. Logic, reveal line secrets. Haha, I did. Okay, so yeah, for you eagle ears out there, that's what that was. Okay, so interesting. Okay, so we'll go back to this middle build up here with Quantum Leap Spaces. I'll take it in and out so you can hear its really subtle effects, but that they actually work well. I'll take it out. It's drier, more in your face. It kind of sticks it in a room, which I like, because one of the issues with sample libraries is that you're stuck with the room that they give you whenever they had originally recorded their samples. So to be able to kind of stick them all in the same room really helps give that perception of reality, a little bit more realistic type of sound, which is important for what we're doing here. Now, we got some reverb talked about, and again, I promise I'll go into much more detail into each of these individual libraries, quantum leaf spaces, and stuff like that in the future. Right now I just kind of want to do an overall introduction thing to get this off the ground. So I like to use the isotope ozone plugin. It's got the equalizer, harmonic exciter, stereo imaging, dynamics, maximizer, all that good stuff. A lot of fun presets that you can use, and you can not use the presets if you don't want to. And you can do a lot with it. I'll bypass this actually. I'll click play on this so you can kind of hear the effects of what ozone can do, and see if we can look into more about what it does exactly. See, I'll start here where the melody starts. I'm gonna bypass it here. I'm just going to bypass the EQ part of it. Kind of sharp and grainy without that EQ in there. Stereo imaging. So what Ozone 5 does is basically a mixing and a mastering tool that allows you to control the spread of your individual frequencies, lets you control the dynamics of them. In EQ, obviously, you can match EQ actually, and match or roughly match the EQ of a song that you're wanting to mimic. As a maximizer, that's got some pretty fun stuff in there. Like I said, I didn't go into much depth in this mixing process. I just kind of push buttons until it sounded reasonable, then put it out there because I'm kind of crunched to do other projects that I'm working on. But I will do a video on this process as well, actually getting a more pro mix sound for movies, games specifically, that type of mixing. If you don't have Ozone 5 and you just have Logic or Cubase with its built-in EQ plugins, that's fine, because anything that you can do in here, you know, with your multiband EQs or whatever you can do with a reverb plugin, or if you have an exciter, you should be able to do with the plugins that come with your system, so worry not. Usually the knowledge from one plugin like this can be applied to plugins in general, and will be able to help you out. Now lastly here, almost forgot, something I would like to point out, especially about the choir library. If you have it, make sure that whenever you're using it, that you're utilizing both CC1 and CC11, both expression and velocity modulation, because there's so much more with this library, the sound that you can get out of it if you're using both. Oop, I clicked on the wrong one. My bad. There we go. Okay, so there's the dynamics, and then there's expression, modulation, and CC11 expression. What that lets you do is it controls the in the case of most libraries in general, it'll control not only the attack or the velocity on it, but the speed and the dynamic that the players or vocalists in this case would be using. And let's see, I haven't actually seen this for myself, but I want to play around with this and see if we can get a look at how down here you can see there's modulation going on, but then there's also expression doing different things for these libraries. So if we open these and take a look, see, I have all three of these choirs doing different things with the expression and different things with the modulation, depending on the consonants or the vowels that I'm looking for at a particular point in time in the song. Like when it builds up around here, I wanted all this to be all the way up here. You might be looking at this and going, that looks kind of sloppy, and yeah, you're right, it is sloppy. I didn't spend much time on this part, although this is an important thing to do, is make sure that you are putting in your expression, velocity, and modulation info, and not just writing the mod wheel on your keyboard. These sound libraries are much more advanced than that. So if we click play here and pull these up, we should be able to see each of these knobs here doing stuff. Because I haven't done anything with the dynamics yet, but I have a feeling it will soon. You can see this one's all the way up now, this one's down. See, dynamics up on this one, dynamics still low on this one. But the point is that they're always moving and always doing something. So that really gives the choirs and the instruments, just like the violins here. There's CC. See, it's not on this track, but there are CC1 and CC11 values going on in the background, controlling your stuff. I'm using an external device from Korg that's actually not part of my keyboard. It's well, for this I use the Nano Control because it absolutely does the job just fine. There's no reason to spend $900 or more on another keyboard that you don't necessarily need to have if something like that will work, or the other MIDI controllers that I have here. For this one, I just use this, kind of testing it out, and it works well because I can assign the knobs and the buttons to control whatever CC values that I'm looking for at the time. And I guess that's pretty much it for this video. I can't think of much else that I could throw in here without completely boring you guys to a puddle of tears. But if you guys have any questions, maybe I did miss something, post it in the comments or write me an email or Facebook or whatever. Make sure that I know what it is that you guys are looking for specifically. This whole video series sort of really started with emails that I've been getting from some younger composer friends of mine who maybe just got their sound libraries and they're just really wanting to start out with movie music, which is great. So I thought I'd do this to help those guys out, and if anyone else can pick up any useful info on it, then that's a bonus. So yeah, post a comment, like and subscribe if you want to see more, because I will be doing more. I'll be doing in-depth Logic tutorials, more mock-ups like this, instrumental reviews, stuff like going into this library here, Rise and Hit, and all the features that it has, and doing a walkthrough of those sounds as well, see if it's something that you want to add to your collection. And we'll just take things from there. Thank you guys for watching. I hope that you enjoyed, and I'll be doing this again real soon.